How good is Fearless Scout? To ask how good is Fearless Scout is to ask how good a scout trait actually is. Welcome to the third installment of Zura's workshop, where we take a deeper look at the cards to see what are they worth. This time, the card we'll be looking at is... wait for it! Fearless Scout! Yeah, I kinda spoiled that in the beginning, not gonna lie. By itself, the card is incredibly easy to break down. It's a one-cost attachment that effectively replaces itself. It means you're not actually paying a card to get the benefit of it as usual. All you're paying is a resource, since it draws a card back. It's better than you think, as it allows you to accelerate the speed you're going through your deck, and unlike cards like Nor Am I Stranger, it doesn't feel bad to draw this card from the top of your deck in the late game, when you happen to be struggling for cards. But the actual part is the benefit itself, which it does. One thing. It grants the Scout trait to the attached character. It's one of the 4 attachments in the card dream cycle, which granted respectively Ranger, Warrior, Scout, or Noble trait, while still drawing you a card. The Scout trait doesn't do anything by itself, as most traits do, however traits were not born equal. If you're granted Gondor trait in a game where Visionary Leadership and Boromir are in play, the benefit is obvious. But Scouts? Did someone say Scouts? Well, this means to evaluate the Fearless Scout, we need to evaluate the whole realm of Scout synergies. So let's get it out of the way real fast. We're getting to the synergies right now, as we can't talk about this one without them really. Gonna say a few words about each of them. First up, Grey Cloak. If you are playing Fearless Scout, it means you're running Spirit, and it means you could be running Grey Cloak anyway, and play it on any Spirit ally, so it's kind of redundant. It's good in Scout deck, however, as it allows you to avoid enemies as Scouts want to do, but you don't need Fearless for it. Next. Second up, we have Guarded Ceaselessly. I don't really feel like playing a card just in order to be able to exhaust your hero that you had to play a special attachment on to reduce your threat on a specific location by 2 is worth in the world we live in. Next. Third up, it's Map of Rovanion. And hey, if you liked Lorien Guide from Corset a lot, now you can become one yourself. It's probably worse than a single willpower boost, but it's not terrible. I would take it into consideration. The 4th attachment I have is Mariner's Compass, and I really like this card, but it's probably just better to use it with cheap allies to not waste your hero's actions. If you're running leadership, which you need to play Mariner's Compass, just play it on your Errand Rider. Next. Warden of Arnor. You're a War Stalin, but 4 locations. Actually, it's the best application so far. A progress in staging is usually better than progress on active location, and combine it with effects like Northern Tracker and Greyflood Wanderer, and location control has never been easier. We're halfway through the list. Distant Stars. It's good for shenanigans. And talking about distant stars could be a whole entire video or 2 entire videos, and all the synergies can't be just put there. Anyway, the synergies, okay, I would take it into consideration. The 7th card that synergizes with Scout trait is Expert Trackers. It's another location control tool, it's very conditional, it requires both exhaust and a big enemy, but if payoff's there and you're planning for it, it's free, so why not? Okay, synergy, Hunting Party. It's pretty random to have no other scouts and wanting to change someone into one just to trigger this. Usually you just want more scouts, not the one changed by Fearless to be the only one. In described scenario you want both cards so Hunting Party can happen, so not too good. Next. Number 9 is Scouting Party. Yeah, that's what you want to be a scout for, to join the party. It's +2 willpower for all. It's pretty good, it's the best one on the list. The 10th and final one is Well Warned. You can reduce the threat level in Spirit without having to become a scout to do so. So play this one if you're already a scout, because otherwise there is a ton of better options. So that will be all for the synergies. I'm not going to compare this one to other trait granting attachments, as it would be total nonsense, as all of the synergies that are based around the trait are very different, so we're skipping the similar cards bit. Let's get into the deck. The deck on the screen has quite a history. I tried refining it so many times, I actually lost count somewhere. A fun thing about this one is I started with the lineup on the screen, I changed it a few times, mostly just fooling around with swapping Idraen for either Smeagol or Gandalf. Yeah, I know, those are pretty different decks, but tried both of them out. But in the end, I was back to this lineup. It's a Haldan scout deck that is pretty addicted to locations, and Glorfindel is there to provide us with Asphalot, which is the best location control tool that's in the game. Fearless Scout goes on Glorfindel, of course, as he's the only one that's not a scout, so he can join the scouting party, and Dwarven Tomb is there to keep the party going. We're running Steward and a good harvest combo, because most of the time I've spent testing this one was in solo environment, but in multiplayer just take it out and let someone else run Steward of Gondor. We needed it for solo testing to actually make some tempo, as it's not too self-sufficient otherwise. It probably only works in quests that aren't really combat oriented. And in gameplay section I will show you guys a few highlights of the variation of the deck that featured the lineup on the screen. One of the games I've played was with a friend of mine, one of which I'm running a campaign with, and we're stuck at Mount Doom recently, guys. I asked him to use the combat deck to make up for miscellaneous of this one, and when it comes to our combat, the only saving grace we have is that we have good action advantage and we have starting attack of 9. So let's see how it fares quickly before the verdict. The first scenario I've decided to showcase was the Redhorn Gate. It's an older quest and not that much of a challenge, but it was one of my better attempts. Arwen kinda felt like cheating with helping me smooth resources before Steward of Gondor managed to happen, and I had to wait a lot for good harvest sadly. I managed to avoid the majority of the enemies and I sailed pretty smoothly to victory after a few hiccups. Fun fact is that in the remaining 11 cards in my deck, apparently were 3 copies of Light of Valinor, which kinda sucks. We win with Scouting Party at the end, but truth to be told, without the party I would have just probably won next round. Fearless Scout basically won us additional 5 willpower for the one use of Scouting Party, and that's it. And this is the multiplayer game I have mentioned earlier. My teammate ran a Dunedain deck to really help me with the enemies. This game I got value out of being a scout only with Scouting Party again, but never was it necessary to progress, even at the end and even while considering that Scouting Party was recycled with Dwarven Tomb. In the game, Idraen died one turn short of victory due to Sahir getting 2 attacks while betraying us from the shadow effect. I hate the guy. And the teammate actually managed to defend an awful lot of enemies at once, and I think without the assistance I couldn't really reach the victory alone in this deck. And it was an okayish win, proving me again that I never really once needed Fearless Scout to win. And if you're interested in some content that my teammate is doing, I'm linking his channel in the description, but his content is Polish, so if you're familiar with the language, feel free to check it out. There were a lot more games beside those two, and trust me about that, I've run 3 different decks in many incarnations, but not once was I successful enough. On ringsdb.com there is only one deck I found that makes some real use out of the card, and I'm afraid it might just be better off running something else. I will leave it in the description for your use. This card is a bit of a trap. It leads into many directions, but all of those directions only lead to Scouting Party, really. If you run 2 scouts, you can just omit the Fearless Scout and run something that does something on its own. As on Scouting Party turns, you're likely overquesting anyway. If you run just 1 scout, well then Fearless Scout could be worth it, but why even bother then? You have to draw hard to make it happen, and when you can pull this off, you can pull off a ton of other combinations that are probably better. It gets 1 with a plus, because it draws you a card back, meaning at least you're paying 1 to thin your deck. But this plus doesn't really matter when there are various ways of thinning your deck. So, how good is Fearless Scout? Turns out it's pretty bad. Thank you for watching this far. As you might have noticed, I tried making this video a bit shorter and more concise, and please let me know in the comments if you like the format, or maybe you would want to go down to 5 minutes, or maybe the videos should be a bit longer. We're still experimenting and it's up to you how detailed you want the card overview to be. If you have any suggestions about the next card you want me to cover in the future, also leave a comment. And stay safe and see you guys in the next one.